person you are.
I'm actually a good
Next, build a new habit
artist.
on purpose.
Something to say.
Okay, so none of this is one and done or a magic
I'm
overnight
a
cure,
good
and I'm
artist.
not
If I
going to
want
pretend
this
that
to
it
finish,
is.
eh?
You've spent
You
years up
know
to
that
this point, maybe even decades, wearing a groove into
you
your
know what?
brain that sounds like that nasty little
Of
voice.
course I
And you
am.
don't undo all of that in a single afternoon. So, this is about an ongoing practice, not making a sudden switch. Every time you notice the voice, instead of obeying it, every time you answer
Even a baby, if you ask one of my pupils I'm teaching, that is a
you're
baby,
laying down a
you do
new
this,
track.
if people
And at
listen
first
to
it's
it.
probably going to feel awkward and clumsy and forced and maybe even a bit fake. And that's
So
fine.
just come and
That's
give me my
normal.
crown.
That's what new feels like.
And
Nothing
I'm trying
changes
to
if
follow
nothing
this,
changes. And this is you
what is
changing
it called?
the thing. One small and
This
honest step at a
stuff.
time. Next,
Guy, come
being
on, it's not
curious
everywhere here
about where it
that has
came
this
from.
black part.
Okay, so one more big picture piece that makes the rest
I
easier.
don't know how to
When
calculate
you've
it.
got a bit of emotional room to spare,
See, it's not everywhere again now. This is stuff.
whose voice that actually is.
What are you? Calm down. You have done well. Excellent job.
I've done rubbish. I've done rubbish, Abby.
Somewhere along the way, you picked it up, maybe from a
What you
parent
did is
or a
good, man.
teacher or a culture that confused
You are.
punishment with
It's you that says scribbling, but it's not
or an
scribbling like John. See what you're
environment where
doing.
you only felt
Yes, I
safe
do.
if you got things right. Mine was a mix of family and a
have to
couple of
school.
really toxic
This group you are doing
workplaces.
like that.
And
No, no.
I developed
You
this
are
thing
doing
over
Scrabble.
time that I thought
That's
was
not a Ludo. Do you know it's
but
not
that
Scrabble?
really just turned out to be a whole bunch
It
of
is.
survival
You're not doing it
mechanisms
way.
that I'd cobbled together
You know what I'm doing.
to help me cope
Not.
in unhealthy environments.
There's difference.
Okay.
Now, figuring out that sort of thing takes
Am
a
I getting
huge
it
amount of
now?
time to identify, right? And even longer
You're
to
already doing what you are
process.
doing before.
But it's such a relief.
Like this.
Yeah.
You held your pencil like this, not like this, like this. Especially I'm not positioned well. That's why.
Position well.
Hey, allow me to sit. Then stand up.
That voice that
You are
you've
learning.
been
You're that.
treating as
You
the
are learning to
absolute
your.
truth
That's how you
But
should
this is
do it.
actually not what you're using. Stand up. Let me sit.
When you are learning work, that's what you should tell your boss that she should stand up for you.
It's not that I'm telling my boss to stand up for me, but at least so that the results can come out well. Can you kindly stand up? With all due respect, sir, stand up.
You don't have to listen.
My head is not correct. Yeah. Do your work by yourself.
You are very stupid.
You said you are sick. Do your work by yourself.
Very stupid.
Realizing all of that
So come and buy fake pencil for me.
overnight
I went to buy fake pencil for you.
definitely loosens the grip.
So this pencil, I said, this pencil is fake.
It's fake.
Experience.
Wow.
Expired pencil that you bought for me.
Expired pencil, you're using it and you're using it to do the work and it's working
I'm
out.
managing it.
You're managing it. And let me help you to manage it
Here's
now.
what I want you to take away from this episode. The harsh voice in your head
This is looking dark than this one.
to the truth.
This one is looking dark than this.
I don't know, that's why I'm saying I bought fake pencil for
It's
me.
not fake
You just have to
pencil.
stop letting it drive. Because you cannot hate yourself into becoming someone that you're proud
Continue
of.
now.
You can notice the voice, you can name it,
I'm not your mate, don't say because of the senior me or because of the person that's teaching me now.
So here's the main question I want you to sit with. If you spoke to yourself the way you speak to the people you love, what would actually change? Because when you boil it all down, peace of mind starts the moment you stop accepting the harshness as the truth. Because it's not.
Am I getting it?
Continue now.
Each week I like to finish up by sharing a quote about the topic, and I encourage you to take a few moments to really reflect on it and consider what it means to you. This week's quote is by an unknown author, and it is: give yourself some of that kindness you reserve for those you love. Let me repeat that. Give yourself some of that kindness you reserve for those you love.
Can you do another place? I'll start doing my
That's it
part.
for this week. If you found this helpful, please share it with someone who might need to hear it, and leave a rating or review on your favorite platform because it really helps more people discover the show.
And
And
that's spot here. No,
if you'd like to
this
support
spot
my
here.
work, you can join my Patreon. It's
In
linked
my
in
life,
the
people are saying
description
all this
below.
thing.
Thank you very much much for joining me today. Look after yourself and make a conscious effort to share positivity and kindness out into the world, because you get back what you put out. Take care and talk to you next time.
So now, I
Join me
like
next
that
week
you
when I
do
talk
something
about
like
why
this.
you don't have to believe in everything you think. And check out my episode on improving your self-worth next. It's linked in the description. I release new episodes every Sunday, so follow or subscribe to never miss an episode. Let's Talk About Mental Health is an independent program. Discover. How do you figure out what you really want? It's a big question, I know. And if you clicked on this episode, then I'm going to guess that you want to feel like you've got no idea. And that's okay, because you're in good company. Since most of us say that we don't know what we want, and that we're still figuring it out, or we just need a bit more time, a bit more clarity, a bit
This will
more
make your work
space.
faster now.
But what if that's
So
not
can you clap for
actually
me?
true? What if
Please,
deep
can you
down
clap for me?
you already
I'm
know
told I
what
was doing
you
30
want?
minutes.
Today,
Don't
I'm
feel
going
like
to
doing
help you
30 minutes.
identify
Then
it.
why I don't keep
So let's talk about how to figure out
So
what you
now that
want.
it's just done.
Hello and welcome. I'm Jeremy Godwin, and this is the Let's Talk About Mental Health podcast. Practical advice to help you understand and
Yeah,
manage
not for me,
mental
bro.
health. So if you've ever
Not for
felt
me.
stuck on the question, sort of circling it,
I see my friend work.
without ever landing
Um,
on
Ordinarily, this
What?
is CCD shall stay in every space.
sorry, you
you
clean
want to
it
settle
now.
on
That's why
something,
there's
right?
razor.
You want a direction.
Original razor, not even fake.
And you want to stop feeling like everyone else got handed a map for life that you somehow missed out on.
Where's the razor?
And the longer that not knowing goes on for,
Ah, this
the
one is not
more
cleaning
you start
very
to
well.
wonder what's wrong
And I
with
was
you.
hyping the razor before.
Now, there's nothing wrong with you. But before we go
Yeah?
any further, I just want to be really clear
Yeah,
about
bro.
something. For some
Oh,
people,
no.
genuinely not knowing
Yes,
what they
Sha.
want is
Girls will
bigger
shall
than what we're
surely
going to
show
talk
that
about
she's
today.
a girl.
So if
you
you're
will surely
coming
show
out
that
of
you
a
know
period
sense.
of burnout,
Surely show that we are brave.
No,
or
no
a
sense.
stretch of
We are
depression,
brave. We are smart.
that is a very real thing. And it deserves patience,
We are the
not
best
a kick
brave
up the
son
backside.
ever.
I am going
No,
to be
how
covering
did they-
that kind of feeling, that sort of
We are the
feeling
best brave
lost,
son ever. Why
in
is
a
it?
few weeks' time in episode
Are you
346.
whining my gender?
So this today is
We are
not
great.
aimed at you if that's the case. So please make sure that you subscribe or follow so you don't miss out on upcoming live.
We are great.
This one today
Most
is
especially all those
a
ones that are
much
slim.
larger group of us
then
who
I'm
say,
lost.
I
Those
don't
ones that are
know
slim,
what.
they
But
have
if we're
brain.
honest, we actually do on some level. We've
This
just
next
buried it
one.
somewhere
Ah.
so deep down
They have
that we don't have to
brain.
look at it.
And they can lift themselves very well.
Both from the work that I do as a counsellor and
And
from
they
my
always
own
look
life,
younger than their age.
is that most of the time,
You
I
why do
don't
you think
know
those
what
people
I
that are
want.
fat, they want to
Isn't
reduce
this empty
their
space
weight?
where an answer needs to be
You know
found?
why?
It is a door
Because we
that
slim
we've
people.
quietly decided
Good.
to open. And we don't
Boss,
open
no
it
guess, yeah.
because the moment we do,
Yeah, yeah,
the moment we admit what we
yeah,
want,
yeah.
then we're responsible for doing
Yeah,
something
yeah.
about it. So in this episode, I want to show you
I'm
how to
trying to
tell the
let me
difference
work. I'm trying to help you clean it now.
You are spinning it.
No face.
That thing look like cleaner.
what to actually do
Eh,
once you've worked
maybe it's
out
what
which
you're
one
using
you're
to do
dealing
like
with.
this.
Is it cleaner?
Pushing you a
They're
fair
using to,
bit,
you know,
but
this
stick with
one
me
that
because
this fear.
trust me, by the end
I'm
of
not
this
using to clean
episode,
anything.
you'll have a much
No
clearer
face, no
idea
face.
of where to go. Now, before we go any further,
Before
I
you
just
cry.
want to try one really simple
Not
thing.
somebody picking cry.
It's
No,
for
I
you
can't
actually.
clean it.
And it's deliberately
Yes,
simple
my boy.
because,
Papa.
let's be honest, the last thing that you need when you feel stuck is a
I got
massive
that.
project to have to
Okay,
work
me.
on. So, the next time you catch yourself saying to yourself, I don't know what I want,
One sense.
stop for a
One sense like
moment
this one
and
side
then
of
ask
it.
yourself this follow-up question. If I did know, what would it be? That's it. Don't overthink it. Don't try to force it. Don't reach for a sensible answer or the answer that other people might approve of. Just notice whatever floats up first before your
Bring
brain
it to yours.
has a chance to talk you out of it. Because most of the time, something does float up. A career you'd actually
At
want,
least
or a lifestyle,
this is a
a
great job.
conversation
Supposed
that
to
you've
at
been
least
avoiding,
applaud for that.
a place
Who's
you'd
there?
rather be, a version of your life that looks looks different from this one. And the speed at which that thought arrived usually tells you that the answer was never really missing. It was just waiting for you to stop pretending that you couldn't see it. If you knew, what would it be? Don't worry, you don't have to act on whatever comes up. Not yet, at least. Right now, I just want you to notice that something came up at all. And we'll build on that as we go along. Don't stress if nothing comes to mind, because later on we'll talk about how to tackle that. Just give it a go. So let's take a moment to get ourselves on the same page. And let's talk about what I don't know what I want really means. So let's be clear about what we're actually talking about here, because this is a phrase that gets used a lot. Now, when most of us say, I don't know what I want, we're not describing a genuine blank mind. It's more like a kind of fog that we've allowed to settle over something that we'd rather not look at directly. It's not that the answer isn't there, it's that we've put it somewhere out of focus, out of sight, out of mind, because focusing on it would force a decision. So I don't know what I want becomes a kind of holding pattern. It lets us off the hook. It buys us some time. And it sounds so reasonable that nobody, including you, will ever question it. But on the inside, it's still there. And it's a sort of low-level, nagging restlessness. You feel stuck. You can't quite say what you're stuck on. You feel like something's missing. But if someone asked you what it is, you'd probably just shrug. You might look at other people who seem to know exactly what they're chasing and feel a quiet mix of envy and confusion, as though they got some sort of instruction manual that you've never received. And underneath all of it, there's often a faint and uncomfortable sense that you're not where you need to be. Though you couldn't tell me exactly where that place is. And that feeling, by the way, is definitely worth paying attention to, because it's usually right. You're not where you need to be. Now, the challenge is that we tend to treat I don't know what I want as a thinking problem. So we just assume that if we just analyze harder, or watch the right video, read the right book, or wait until life calms down, then the answer will eventually reveal itself to us, right? So we go looking for more information. It's probably why you're here with me today. But more information rarely ever fixes it, because the answer was never really missing in the first place. This was never a thinking problem. It's a feeling problem. And more specifically, it's a feeling fear problem. We don't lack the answer. We lack the willingness to face what the answer would ask of us. And that's the part that I really want you to sit with before we go any further, because it changes everything about what comes next. If not knowing what you want was truly a lack of information, then the solution would be to go and get more information. But if not knowing is actually a way of avoiding something, then no amount of research and analysis is ever going to shift that. You could journal until your hands fall off and you'd still be stuck. You could watch all of YouTube twice and you'd still be stuck, because you'd be using all that thinking to circle the thing rather than meaning the thing. So the real question here isn't, what do I want? The real question is, what am I avoiding by telling myself I don't know what I want? And I'm very sorry if you feel a bit attacked right now, but we do need to talk about it honestly. It has such an enormous impact on your about why staying stuck in I don't know wears you down. So why does figuring this stuff out matter so much for you? Well, it is because living in that sort of fog has a real cost, and it's a cost that most of us enormously recently. There were years where I told myself I didn't know what I wanted from my work, from my life, from any of it. And looking back, it's almost embarrassing just how clearly I did know. I just wasn't ready to admit it because admitting it meant I'd have to change things. And the idea of changing things was terrifying. But the fog is not protecting you. It's postponing you. Every day you spend pretending that you don't know what you want is a day that you don't spend moving toward the thing you actually want. And that has a way of quietly grinding down your sense of self. Because some part of you knows, some part of you always knows. And when you keep overriding that part, when you keep telling yourself a story that you know isn't quite true, you create this low-level friction inside yourself, a sense of being slightly out of step with your own life. That friction has a name, and the name is self-betrayal. It's the specific and destructive discomfort of knowing one thing, but living another. This stuff is like a loop. Left alone, this pattern does not stay still. It builds and builds. The longer you tell yourself you don't know what you want, the more your world will narrow to fit that smaller and safer version of your life. And the harder it becomes to remember that you never wanted anything else. That's the real cost. It's not just the unmade decision, but a slow shrinking of what you believe is possible for you. I think a lot of us are walking around calling ourselves confused. What we really are is scared. And there's no shame in that. But there's no progress in it either. Nothing changes if nothing changes. And naming what you want honestly is the first real step towards making it happen. And we're going to talk about how you actually start to do that right after this quick break. And welcome back. So now let's get into the how-to part of today's episode and let's talk about how to figure out what you want. Right, let's get into what you can actually do about this. And I'm going to keep it simple, practical, and realistic because many people start needing a 45-step life overhaul plan being dumped onto them. And as always, everything I talk through is written up in the episode transcript on my website at ltamh.com/episodes, and it's linked in the description, so you don't need to scramble to take notes. Now the first thing to do is what we actually start with on the episode, so let's go and build on that, and it is run the honesty test. When you catch yourself saying, I don't know what I want you to stop and genuinely ask yourself, do I really know what I want, or is this avoidance? And here's how you tell the difference, because it isn't always obvious. A real mental blank around what you want, the kind that comes after burnout or grief or depression, tends to feel heavy and flat and murky across the board. It's kind of like your whole windscreen has misted over and you can't see a damn thing. Avoidance feels different. Avoidance feels specific. There's usually a particular area that your mind keeps shying away from or veering away from. A topic of thought that you just quickly change in your own head. A question that makes your stomach tighten a little. If there's a subject that you keep not thinking about with a lot of energy, that's for you, then check out episode 99, where I dig deeper into that topic and it's linked to the episode description. Okay, next, stop trying to think your way out of it. And I really do mean stop it. If you've been researching the same question for 6 months, or reading yet another book about finding your purpose, or waiting for some calm and clear moment when the answer will finally descend on you, then please hear me loud and clear. That approach has already reached you. It's not because you're doing it wrong, or because you haven't listened to the right podcast yet, but because you're using thinking to solve something that thinking cannot solve. You can't reason your way out of a feeling that you're avoiding. So stop adding more information. You almost certainly have enough already if you've been doing that much research. What you're missing here is not data, it's honesty. And you don't find honesty by thinking harder. You find it by being braver. Next, name the fear, not just the want. So once you suspect there's a want that you've been dodging or trying to avoid, don't just try to name the want, but instead name what's frightening about it. Because the fear is the thing that's actually keeping that door slammed shut. So that's the thing that you have to actually look at first, right? Ask yourself, if I admitted that I wanted this, what would I be afraid of? And then be specific. Am I afraid that I'd fail and look foolish? Afraid of disappointing someone whose opinion I rely on? Afraid I have to give something up? Afraid that I want something I've decided I'm not allowed to want? Afraid of things changing? When you name the fear out loud, two things happen. First, it gets smaller because fear almost always shrinks the moment that you say it out loud plainly instead of just letting it lurk in the corners. And secondly, you finally start dealing with the real problem instead of the distraction. The fear is the distraction. The want was never the hard part. The fear was. Next, listen to your heart. Deep down, you probably know what you want. Or at the very least, you know what you don't want. So start there. You will hear a million bits of advice in the self-development industry to research and follow your passion, and that's lovely. But my passion is reciting lines from 90s British sitcoms like Absolutely Fabulous in my day-to-day life, but it's very tough to make a living out of that. I mean, don't get me wrong, I would if I could. Instead, listen to what your heart says about what you want and need, as well as what you don't want. And allow that to guide you as you explore what your options are. Even just identifying what you don't want is a great starting point, and it helps you to slowly take steps from there. Okay, next, say it out loud plainly. This sounds simple, maybe almost too simple, but it's one of the most powerful things you can do. So please don't skip it. Take the thing that you've half admitted to yourself and say it out loud as a plain sentence. I want to leave my job. I want to end this relationship. I want to try, even though I might fail. I want a different life than the one I've built. Say it out loud to yourself, in the car, wherever, maybe not in the middle of the supermarket, but hey, you do you. Because there's an enormous difference between a want that's still vague and floating around in the ether versus a want that you've said to yourself as a clear sentence in your own voice. The vague version lets you keep pretending. The plain, honest version makes it real. And once it's real, you can finally do something with it. So, be honest with yourself. That phrase gets thrown around a lot, be honest with yourself, but this is what being honest with yourself actually means in practice. It's saying the true thing plainly, even when the comfortable thing would be to just keep it blurry and vague. Next, take one small step, not a giant leap. Now, here's where a lot of people start panicking, because they assume that admitting it out loud and saying what they want means they have to immediately blow everything up. Quit the job tomorrow, end the relationship conversation, or sending one email, or spending one evening looking into what it would actually take to change your career. If you've admitted that a relationship isn't right or isn't healthy, the step might be letting yourself acknowledge it fully rather than forcing some sort of action. Small steps are how you test the water without drowning, and they're how change actually happens for real people with real responsibilities. Now, sometimes, yes, things genuinely do need to be blown up, and you'll know if that's you. But for most of us, most of the time, the path forward is to shake your life up a bit by bit, not torching it entirely, because nothing changes if nothing changes. But change doesn't have to mean chaos. Next, build the habit of being direct with yourself. And this is the longer game, the thing to build over time. And the reason why the fog settled in the first place is that somewhere along the line, it became easier to not know than to face things honestly. So the work here isn't just answering this one question, it's to build a different relationship with yourself. One where you don't let yourself get away with the comfortable lie anymore. Where you notice when you're being vague in order to avoid discomfort. And where you gently call yourself out on it. That's an ongoing practice, not a one-off thing. Every time you choose the honest answer over the comfortable fog, you make the next honest answer a little bit easier. And you make it that much harder for avoidance to disguise itself as confusion ever again. And before you talk yourself out of all of this stuff, just sit for a moment with the cost of not doing anything. Because if you keep telling yourself that you don't know what you want, then you're not going to stay still, you'll go backwards. The want becomes quieter, your world gets smaller, and one day you'll look up and a lot of time has passed with nothing changed except for your age and the number of regrets that you carry. You've got one life, and it's happening now, not later when you feel ready for it. So this week, here's what I want you to actually do. Catch yourself in one I don't know moment, run the honesty test, and if it is avoidance manifesting, then name the want and the fear underneath it as two plain sentences. That's the whole task for you for the next week, right? It's not about solving your entire life, just stopping the pretending. Because everything else grows from there. So here's what I want you to take away from this episode. There's a very good chance that you do know what you want, and that what you're really wrestling with isn't a lack of clarity, it's a fear of what that clarity would require of you. And the way forward is to be honest with yourself about the want and the fear, and then take one small and honest step towards the life that you actually want. So, what have you been telling yourself that you don't know, when the truth is, you're just not ready to hear? Because when you boil it all down, the moment you stop being scared to admit what you really want, is the moment everything starts to change. Each week I like to finish up by sharing a quote about the topic, and I encourage you to take a few moments to really reflect on it and consider what it means to you. This week's quote is by the late actor Mae West, and it is, knowing what you want is the first step toward getting it. Let me repeat that. Knowing what you want is the first step toward getting it. Alright, that's it for this week. If you found this helpful, please share it with someone who might need to hear it, and leave a rating or review on your favourite platform, because it really helps more people discover the show and the advice I share. And if you'd like to support my work, you can join my Patreon. It's linked in the description below. Thank you very much for joining me today. Look after yourself and make a conscious effort to share positivity and kindness out into the world, because you get back what you put out. Take care and talk to you next time. Join me next week when I talk about how to stop feeling miserable. And check out my episode on how to stop existing and start living next. It's linked in the description. I release new episodes every Sunday, so follow or subscribe to never miss an episode. Discover more at ltanh.com. Be honest with yourself. Most days feel like you're just getting through them. Going through the motions. The days and weeks seem to blur together somehow. You do everything you're supposed to do, and yet you still feel flat, hollow, and quietly miserable in your life, even if it looks like you have nothing to complain about. And somewhere along the way, you've decided that means there's something wrong with you. But there isn't, because you've completely misread what that feeling actually is. And once you see it, or what it really is, you can't unsee it. So let's talk about how to stop feeling miserable. Hello and welcome. I'm Jeremy Godwin, and this is the Let's Talk About Mental Health podcast for practical advice to help you understand and improve your mental health. Alright, let's not beat around the bush or dress this up. You're here because you feel miserable. Not necessarily depressed, not in crisis, but just quietly miserable in a life that might even look completely fine from the outside, or maybe even great to some people. And you've maybe been wondering if you're depressed or if you have low mood, and that is totally understandable. And maybe that's the case. But there's a big difference between depressed and feeling miserable. They're not the same thing, and I want to be very clear about that before we go any further. Depression is a clinical condition that needs proper diagnosis and proper support. And if that's where you're at, then I've got a whole episode on it, which is episode 188. It's linked in the description, and I would genuinely encourage you to go and listen to that one. But that's not what this episode is about. This one is about the everyday kind of miserable. It's the dull, flat, feeling stuck kind, the going through the motions kind that doesn't show up on any test and that doesn't have an obvious cause, which is exactly why it messes with your head so much. Because when you can't point to what's wrong, you start to assume that you're the problem, that you're ungrateful or damaged or just bad at being happy, or that maybe you need to pop a happy little pill in order to sort yourself out. And I want to take those ideas and throw them straight in the bin because they're wrong, and believing them is keeping you stuck. The feeling isn't the problem. What you've been doing with it is. And that's what we're going to tackle today. But before we go any further, here's something quick that you can do the next time that flat and miserable feeling shows up. And it's going to cost you absolutely nothing but a little bit of honesty. So, I want you to stop and actually name the feeling instead of just reaching for your phone or a glass of wine to distract yourself or to soothe yourself. That's it. Don't fix it. Don't scroll past it. Don't talk yourself out of it. Just catch that feeling, look at it, and put it into words. Like, I feel flat. I feel stuck. I felt low for weeks or months. Say it to yourself out loud, plainly and honestly. Now, I'm aware that this probably sounds overly simplistic, but it matters. And here's why doing it matters. Because you cannot change something that you won't let yourself look at. And most of us have gotten very, very good at not looking at things that we don't want to. So this week, every time that feeling turns up, name it before you numb it. Alright, let's dig a bit deeper. Now let's talk about what feeling miserable really is. So let's get clear on what we're actually talking about here. Because everyday misery is often a pretty slippery little thing to try and pin down. And that's a big part of the problem. Now when I say miserable, I don't mean sad. Sad has a reason. Something happens, you feel it, and eventually it passes, or you learn how to integrate it into your life. This is different. This is the low, grey, flat feeling that sits underneath everything, even when nothing's obviously wrong. It's waking up and already feeling like the day is something that you have to get through rather than something to be, to experience. It's it's that sense that you're just going round and round in circles, doing the same things over and over and over again, and none of it really hits anymore. It's an ongoing state of meh. You're not in crisis, you're just flat, switched off, going through the motions. And here's what it actually feels like. I mean, you probably already know. It's the Sunday night feeling that somehow that dread has spread across the whole week. It's scrolling for an hour and feeling worse, not better. It's being tired in a way that sleep just will not